just have an introduction from each of you, a sentence or two, who you are, where you're from, why you're here, what you're excited about. We'll start down at the bottom. There is a speaker, a mic.
Thank you very much indeed. My name is Felix Maringe. I am currently the head of School of Education at the Wits School of Education. I'm here because I really believe that education and business need to work with each other. But I think I'm also here because in education we do not seem to know, one, what to ask for, and secondly, who to ask. We usually go to the library to seek answers to our problems, but business does not exist in libraries. It exists elsewhere. And we usually go out to ask for money. And it is not just about money that we should be associating with business. Sometimes businesses got very smart ideas about how to handle a lot of the problems we are facing in education. And it may be just about an association which helps us to harness those kinds of things. So if anything, I'm hoping to have been educated by this event about where do we go and what do we ask for.
My name is Mutimandi Aho. I am one of the founders of Teach South Africa, and I'd just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Richard Masemola in the crowd, who's a founder, and Lerato I saw somewhere who's from Teach. I'm not from education, but when we started Teach about 10 years ago, it has been an incredible journey, and I think I'm sitting here because I'm driven by curiosity and what I've seen and the complexity that is education. And I think I grew up in a house led by teachers. I'm surrounded by teachers in my life, and I'm a mother of a 25-year-old and a 27-year-old. And I think I am here for a bigger purpose. But I think for the questions that are being asked today, I hope that there'll be an answer in the amount of energy and money that has been thrown into education, not only in this country, but globally, in how we're preparing for the citizen of the future.
My name is Achie Mojuan. I'm the Executive Director for the Global Compact Network South Africa. The Global Compact is global, as the name suggests, and we do work with business across the world to try and create the world that we want. And so our focus is business, and on their role in society, we encourage companies to be active corporate citizens. It was founded in 2000 by the late Kofi Annan across the 10 principles that involves understanding the business role of human rights on issues like labor protection, on anti-corruption, on environmental protection, and lately, of course, we are quite involved with ensuring that we meet Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, which are quite aligned to South Africa's National Development Plan, which also is headed to 2030. And so, quality education is goal 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we are currently trying to work with business to say, how do you mainstream these SDGs into your corporate strategy? We no longer want them as these side activities that business do, but to be centrally located in strategy and to be able to then realize the educational outcomes that we are looking for as South Africa. So I hope I'll get an opportunity to share a bit later on the trends that are emerging within business or from business on how they're beginning to understand education and to do it a little differently.
My name is Marhoshi. The surname is Sindani. I serve in the Development Bank of Southern Africa in the role of Corporate Social Responsibility Program Manager. I'm here because I'm a product of business in education. Being a child number 6 in a family of 7, with a father with standard 4 of those years and a mother with standard 1, there was no hope of getting anywhere. But with the help of an emerging business person who sprung me into education, I was sustained in that institution by business. And it's remained in my heart because most of those people, most of those businesses I never met. I just was a beneficiary of the funding and I did not know where it came from. So it is an opportunity for me to be able to serve in a situation where business is doing to others what it did to me. In the GBSA, I'm the only resource in that function. So the Corporate Social Responsibility function has got only one resource, and this is the one that's sitting here. So what we're doing, the GBSA itself finances infrastructure development. So we are aligning ourselves to that, and I've been noting here we've been financing ECD infrastructure. However, we questioned whether are we focused only on physical infrastructure. The answer was no. Human capital infrastructure is also infrastructure, and hence PFP became a forum on which we can, with the limited resources, ensure that human capital infrastructure is on the cards. Thank you.
I'm Grant, so that's been covered. I suppose why I'm here, or my views on business and education, the topic at hand, is one of the learnings from the or from my PFP programming experience is it's very obvious to me that the distribution curve of opportunity in our society does not overlap the distribution curve of talent. And there is an incredible segment of our society that hasn't been included in our opportunity curve. And what we're looking for from, I think, from leadership across both the government sector and the business sector is ethical leadership that is seeking to create greater levels of social inclusion, economic and financial inclusion, and fundamentally social cohesion. And I think we need to collaborate, partner, and work together to achieve the society that I believe Mandela wished for us.
What I'd like to do is just start with a couple of questions to really dig into what practically can we do, because it's great to say business should be involved in education, but actually there's a gritty reality that needs to be faced. So, Felix, if I could ask you, what do you regard as the current pain points in our education system, and how do you feel that business could play a role in alleviating these?
I think that's a very, very important question, and I'm going to try and indicate some of the things that probably do not quite enable us to engage with business. Some of them are as a result of perhaps the way we actually perceive of education and its role. And others are probably structural, and so on and so forth. But I think that the first problem that exists within our education system that does not allow us to engage with business is the conservatism that is within education. It's not an innovative space. Education is about conserving. If you read some of the old philosophies of education, it's about conserving the knowledge that has been gathered over long periods of time, and that's what it is about. And so that space is not innovative. It is not anywhere near what happens in the business area. So that's one thing. And I think the other problem is that education is usually about transmission, right? It's about transmission. Just deliver the knowledge and ideas to our group of learners and hope that they can regurgitate those ideas at the exam time. And if they do, they pass and move on. It's not really about thinking, and especially it is not really about critical thinking skills. So the products we have out of the school system are what some people would refer to as purveyors of other people's bright ideas. And that's what we do. If our schools can have that 100% pass, that's all we are going to be proud about having achieved. But it is not because we want to really create thinking people who are critical about the environment in which they are and who can also try to solve them. I've got a number of other things here, but I'm aware of the fact that other people need to tackle the same question as well.
Thank you, Felix. It's obvious, I think, that most of us in the room are in the room here because we care about education, and we are super conscious of the fact that our education system in South Africa is in trouble. So, one of the questions from John Murphy was, we've heard encouraging success stories, but what can we learn from this education story in South Africa, where less than 10% of our learners are getting a third tertiary education and actually having access to work. So thank you. I would like to then perhaps ask, there's a great question from Chepo here, from Chepo Malakani. He says, business generally has a let them come to us for sponsorship attitude versus let's go out there and partner with the community. Businesses in Sandton, for instance, could easily engage with the Alex community and partner in so many different socioeconomic opportunities. Why are they not being proactive and actively reaching out to participate? So Grant, I'd like to direct that question to you. It's fairly long, but I think you've got some thoughts on it. What is your sense about how can we shift the mindset from let them come and ask to let us understand what the needs are?
So I'm going to answer that question, but I suppose if I can just make an observation about the comments Felix made, I was absolutely blown away by the quality of the questioning that I received from Freddie's senior leadership community when we discussed the role of education and the curriculum and the appropriateness of the curriculum, etc. And I would suggest that maybe there's an opportunity for educators to engage with the teaching community and say, how do we evolve and improve that? Because the caliber of the conversation that I had with Freddie's community was incredibly impressive. And despite the fact that they're getting 100%, they're still questioning how relevant is teaching people data. And they're looking at, well, our teaching philosophy is underpinned by values, skills, and behaviors. And despite that, they're still able to achieve the 100% pass rate on the data points. So they're getting the balance right. And I think that's something that probably needs to be explored more broadly across the education system. In terms of your question, Robin, I suppose my perspective is there is a need for the business community to be more socially active and socially involved, and probably less passive. If I look at the state of the South African economy, we're obviously going through a very tough time. But I look at how the South African corporate landscape has performed in the past 25 years of democratization. We've ended up in an environment where we have the highest Gini coefficient in income inequality in the world. And that doesn't happen in a vacuum. And the question I'm asking is, how do we create business leaders where social impact is fundamentally purpose to the role of our business? And so why we exist and how we show up every single day, we're evidencing our social purpose and we're living our social purpose. And if businesses are led in that way, I think more proactively and supported in terms of the board agenda is driving social impact. I think the next 5 or 10 years can create a slightly different outcome than the situation we find ourselves in now. And so my ask is for business leaders to get more active and be more proactive in terms of our role in society, and I suppose more collaborative across the various stakeholders in society, more broadly.
We just did a survey a few weeks ago because this year South Africa will report back to the UN member states on South Africa's performance on the SDGs, and especially on education and on inequality. Those are the special areas for reporting for this year. And so the presidency asked us to collate how business is performing on those 17 SDGs. So we did a small survey, and what has come back is that business would prioritize SDG 8 across the board, which is decent work and economic growth. But number 2 is education, and they're arguing that for South Africa to get to a place where there's sufficient decent jobs and economic growth, they are going to have to support education because it's an enabler for economic growth. So that is what companies are saying right now. So the trends I was talking about earlier is that we are seeing a movement back to supporting education, but doing it in a way that is holistic. It's no longer just going into a community or going into one school to support maths and science. Companies are realizing that there's a huge interconnectedness of challenges, both at the systemic level, at the broader macroeconomic level, and also down in specific schools. So one school here is not necessarily facing the same challenges as the same school 5 kilometers down the road. And so what are the specifics? So there's a diagnostic going on by certain companies. Anglo American is saying in the next 3 to 4 years we are going to support putting 100 million runs into 100 schools, for instance. So we are seeing companies moving to very hard targets and giving themselves KPIs. I think we are in a good space, but there's a lot of work that remains to be done. So we need to, I think going forward, try to elevate those good examples that are coming up. Unfortunately, we can't talk about impact yet. Maybe it's too early. But 5 years down the road, we want to come back and say, all those efforts that our companies are putting up 5 years ago, what has been the impact? And I think that's the most important thing to look forward to.
Thank you. Yes, I really do. The truth is, if you're looking for a wicked problem, there's few to beat education in South Africa. So we have a serious Gordonian knot, and I think it's really refreshing to hear that people are moving away from the silver bullet, one quick fix, one intervention, spot this, spot that, and towards more strategic approaches. So Mahoshi, there's a question here that I think is an interesting one that relates to, number one, your human capital concept, the fact, and I love it, the fact that infrastructure is beyond the physical. We actually have a virtual human infrastructure that we need to build. And the question here is, with the increasing youth unemployment rate in South Africa, is it not time for us to spend and invest on initiatives that are more aligned with long-term employment opportunities, and really around that strategic intervention into the system broadly? And I would like, if you could, just share your thoughts on how do we develop the human beings who we are asking to drive that kind of long-term strategy.
From a human capital perspective for the DBSA, the focus has been on starting early and developing from an early childhood development. But that's not different from any other process that is being engaged on. From a physical infrastructure perspective, it's been to provide physical infrastructure. That is the infrastructure that ensures that the institutions or the early childhood development centers are able to ensure that the child is provided with nutritious food that enables them to develop and so on. So that's generally aligned to government. But the perspective that physical infrastructure is not necessarily just buildings, brick and mortar and so on, but human capital. The DBSA itself is involved with the Youth Employment Service, the YES program. They're involved with the what we call the D-Labs, where they go into townships to ensure that there are opportunities and facilities that enable youth to gain access into employment opportunities, but basically more about skills development and so on, such that they are able to get into long-term employability and the skills that ensures that going forward they are in employment. So there is that aspect. Having said that, this is the only resource, that aspect of it goes for the DBSA under innovation. So we are looking into innovative approaches that enables youth employment and youth development and ensures that it is long-term sustainable. And yes, the focus is sustainability of those programs that ensures that our youth gets into the labor market, gets into own businesses, and are able to be self-employed and have long-term opportunities.
So I would like to ask Motomang a question, please, that's come from the audience, because I think you have an awesome answer for it, which is, what is the possibility of final year students doing residencies in schools? While the academic knowledge is provided, student teachers are not getting enough hands-on experience before going into the workplace, particularly in the ECD and foundation phase teaching arenas. And I would like to extend that question a little bit to cover the work of Teachers A. So what are the opportunities really around using the resources, the human resources that are coming out of our degrees and mobilizing them into schools?
Maybe what we've heard from the presentations that were done earlier is talks to Teach South Africa, as you know, recruits graduates, science, maths and English, and now technology to come and teach for 2 years in low-resource schools. And what we've learned, at an average age of 23, is an amazing story of leadership, an amazing story of passion and engagement. And the byline is your country needs you. So it's a service model that you come back and serve for 2 years. But one of the things we picked up is that 68% of this youth stay in education, and they stay in schools, they stay in NGOs involved with education, and some of them are now doing their master's degrees and PhD degrees to further their involvement in education. But that is what intentionally we do when we place them in schools. But it is the other things that they do, using schools as centers of community, the projects in society that they do that are most amazing that we don't intentionally measure. But I think, for me, to go back to your question is, how can we engage the entire youth population to actually serve that way? Because when you exit the program, a SASOL or anybody, I'm just saying SASOL because it comes to mind, is you're getting at 28 an individual that is not only gathered immense skill beyond being an education and a teacher, but an entire spectrum of skills that in 2 years they've gathered in being good citizens. And I think that for me is, yes, we need to take them, as what we're doing now for the next 10 years at Teach, is to getting back to the early childhood development stage, which is the foundation of teaching. It's well and good to sort of be looking at matric passes and all of that are good, but actually we need to go back to solidifying the foundation stage. So that, I think, is what we need to be focusing on.
2 last questions, and I'd like to run them with an opportunity for everybody to input on them. So we have to keep it short because we've got 3 minutes. So the first question goes to the benefits of cross-sectoral collaboration. And my question is this: it's obvious what the benefits of business being involved in education are for education. My question is, what benefits do you believe that business derives from exposure and engagement with education?
So, yeah, doing some work with a group of young students, and we're looking at theory of change. And after a few engagements, the community came back and said there was a huge shift in their mindset. They used to think that the state of the economy was a driver on business delivering its purpose. And what they've realized is business delivering its purpose is a driver of the state of the economy. And so we have to look at the KPIs we have as a society holistically, and more specifically in business, and say, are those KPIs appropriate for sustainable long-term social outcomes? And I think that is one of the opportunities that we could reflect on, and would be beneficial to both business and to society and to education.
I'm going to put it very simply and perhaps symbolically. For us, the benefit of getting involved out there is that employees go out there to fill their cups and come back to drain them within the organization. So the full state of fulfillment that they get they derive in getting involved out in communities out there compensates for the demands that they have within the organization. So the productivity levels increase based on the fact that they have been involved out there and have served their purpose out there, and they come back to earn their salaries. But their purpose is served out there in communities.
Evident right now that what used to be traditionally the points for competition for business has shifted. And right now, for a business, for a company to gain a competitive advantage, it's going to be measured by how responsible they are and how socially responsible they are. And so I think there are so many levers now for us to get business to work together, to collaborate for the greater social good. It's good for business.
And I think, yes, the business of business is education, because maybe the question we should be asking is not what we fund, which is education, but how we fund it in terms of going back and understanding the future that comes into our businesses.
I think that is a very important question, because if you look at the title here, it seems to be the role of business in education. But I think similarly we could ask the question, what is the role of education in business? And I think, looking at the question from those two perspectives is very important. Let me just give you a very simple example. Here's a small businessman in a township environment. It's always being harassed by young children, young boys and girls who, because they do not have access to schools, they spend their time in the streets and so on and so forth. Is that not an opportunity for the businessmen to sponsor an end of school kind of program to get those youngsters to do some kind of meaningful work? But sometimes perhaps business don't think that way, because they think about the immediate profit, and profit defined in very narrow terms of money. But I think in a wider sense, the profit that business gets out of education is really long-term in terms of developing the minds of people who, when they are educated, become perhaps more accommodative of other people's views, more inclined towards democratic dispensation, more inclined away from crime, and so on and so forth. But those are very long-term, and yet business sometimes perhaps tends to focus on very short-term gains in terms of how much money have you made at the end of the year.
Thank you. Are we down to one now? Goodness, okay. So I just really want to comment on one thing that came through, and I'm just going to use my platform for a sec here. So there's a question that Gunther posed, which was, or not really a question, a statement, to say that as great as the problems in education are, we have 7.3 million unemployed and more than 17 million on social grant and thousands of students who can't afford their fees and thousands and millions of unemployed youth. And, you know, is it not moot to talk about education because actually there's not really an education system with those conditions? And I just feel quite strongly that I would like to respond to say, so firstly, for years we have been talking, the people in the education space have been saying, unless we address this issue, this country will burn. Unless we address this issue, there is going, and the country is now really, let's not go there too much. But the point is here, we have short-term or major, imminent, urgent crises that need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed. And we have urgent and long-term interventions that need to be put into place if we hope to turn it around at all. And I think that's where education sits. It has not only short-term benefits but long-term benefits too. And it is also not divorced from the rest of what is happening in society. And hence this sense of excitement that actually the problem holds the potential. So the crisis we have to look into to tap and see, well, how can we use that crisis and mobilize around it and actually wind up in not 2 years, in 20 years with a situation that's different from what we currently have. My last question, and again, if we can start this time with Felix and come back, is great. So we agree, business has a role in society, society has a role in business. Education is a key point of engagement. How do we encourage business to become more involved in society, both at a corporate level and at a personal business leader level? How do we make it part of their strategy rather than just part of a nice to do?
Part of it is probably around sharing our understandings about our roles within society. I think that there are so many things that are assumed about the roles of business by us educators and the role of education by the educators, by the business people. And so without a clear sense of what roles both of us are actually playing, it is very difficult to strike a partnership. And the second thing I would say is that probably when we go to a business, for example, to ask for money in order to build capacity in, say, our very talented talented students within our institutions, that when we do so, our schools also provide space to develop the capacities and talent within the business. So these guys can come to our schools in the evening and be taught about a relevant and appropriate talent promotion and development which are going to be working for business. So the same investment into computers, buildings, and so on and so forth can be used by our children, but they can also at night be used by colleagues from the workspace. So when we develop those proposals, I think it has got to be made very clear that this is not just for the benefit of the communities, in the sense of the schools and the children, but it is also in terms of benefiting programs that develop talent within the business sector itself. Once we get to that, I think we begin to see ourselves as partners in terms of development rather than as givers and receivers.
Thank you. I think the work that the UN Compact is doing in proposing the way forward for the next 20 years and how business gives is a really intimate engagement beyond the desk to understand what the social challenges that we face beyond just funding entities. In looking at the entire ecosystem and saying, this is where we put in our money for the return that we expect. I think it's much broader than maybe some businesses are beginning to do that. Physically going out and understanding the challenges that we face. It's looking at the entire systemic value chain and looking at how you fund it as a value chain instead of entities.
So we do have the responsibility as a global compact to support business to mainstream the goals into their core strategy, and we're doing that every day. But we're also encouraging companies who are already seeing good examples in the investments they make in different things, including health or education, to bring that good practice so we are able to share it back and other companies can adopt those good examples and use them to support further. So we do encourage collaboration, we do encourage partnerships, we do encourage the communication of good practice.
I think we've spoken of strategic collaborations. One way that have worked is the levels at which discussions happen about the role of business and where to collaborate. At the highest level, when those issues are raised of collaboration and partnerships in business, more strategic decisions get made and strategic direction gets given. And once it happens at that level, it gets cascaded to lower levels and it becomes practical. But it is a two-way process. The other way is to get people that can talk, people that can be listened to get involved. And the more they talk about it, the more people hear about it, the more they become aware. As an example, this process, personally, having been into the process, kept speaking about it, and it was not believed, spoke about it, and it was heard, continued to speak about it, until an executive speaks on my behalf about the project to a very senior level. So the more people hear about it, because it is the distance, it is the gaps that are there that people are ignorant about, they don't know what they don't know. And the more they know about what they don't know, the more something can happen strategically at those levels.
So I think there's some excellent observations there. The ADD kid in the room has forgotten the question, but the one observation that I suppose I would make is that for me, leadership is an act of service. And if you look at our current president, I think he's a role model of that. And I think we need more leaders and less managers in our society. And so for me, if we're going to see a coming together and collaboration and support and social impact, we're going to need true leadership. Acts of service through both courage and humility on both sides all across all segments of our society, but certainly from both the public sector, the teaching community, and the business environment.
Thank you, thanks, Grant. Right, we have time for 2 live questions, quickly, because we need to get up and active here in a few seconds. Please, a question is a question, and it's not more than 10 words, and it ends in a question mark. So, any hands, just comparing questions there. Firstly, there are lots of questions through here. What we will do, we have our business and education hashtag. We are going to post your questions on Twitter, because they're questions that should promote thinking, and so hopefully we'll get a broader range of thinking coming back on that.
Everything that we do requires funding. We've been doing this for 24 years. So what are we doing differently about funding?
It's a reflection on all of us that are in education. I think one of the presenters talked about your multiplicity of interventions. I think business needs to start asking the difficult questions to people that they fund about who else, what's the network? Because otherwise you're finding 3 systems in the same school and the principal is no longer teaching but focusing on managing funders. So I think the way we do it is we need to start asking really hard decisions in terms of funding.
Maybe I will ask the professor to respond to this one. Some of the challenges that we have in our education system are systemic. I will also make the statement that our South African education is uploading mediocrity. So what do you think can be done to address the systemic problems?
Issues that are of a systemic nature are very, very difficult to unravel and also to try and address and solve, particularly in the short term. These are more or less like legacy kind of issues. They are very difficult. But we've got to keep taking away the person about it. And I think that one thing that might actually help, which perhaps prevents this notion of business must give us in order that we do other things. I don't think that's the relationship we are looking for. I think every time we go away or we go out to present a proposal, we need to be able to say, this is what it means for you. If you don't invest, you are going down, right? But this is also what it means for you. So it's not just a question of saying, can we have 20 computers? It's a question of saying, if we have 20 computers, we will give back this business to you in terms of providing training for your staff, which you really need, and at very low cost compared to perhaps going to very well long established business entities. So I think there is that kind of different mindset required, particularly in our education system, to look at things from that perspective.
Thank you so much.